position. Of course, we're talking to boys like Barts, and we're talking the midfield, which actually got the least recruitment, truth be told, because Florian Wirtz came in. I mean, that was one of the headlines of the summer, wasn't it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Been an adaptation period, I'm going to call it, under so far. So there's two bits I want to look at. The first one is Florian Wirtz, and we've talked about it before, that could play on the left, which I think I'd still like, and a lot of people would like, at times, instead of Gakpo as an alternate. People even said, could he be a false nine? Now, Arne Slot's talked about him as a left, but Florian Wirtz in interviews and said, Arne Slot convinced me as a 10. So we've got to take that straight from his mouth. Yeah. So I suppose we've got to analyse it just right now. Of course, he might play left at some point, but Wirtz is a 10 right now. How's he profiling there?
I think we did the last positional play sort of stats me out, which when you look at against Newcastle, I thought there was periods he was better than. I think Bournemouth, there was periods he was good, and there was periods he was poor. Yeah. I think against Bournemouth he contributed something like 9% of our threat, right? Because a player like that, you want to create, you measure that by the threat he creates, right? Wirtz against. Sorry, let me just get the exact number for you so we're all on the right page. 9% against Newcastle for Wirtz, and then Wirtz against Bournemouth was a high game, so 23% because he was involved in quite a lot. So there's some bits there. Now you can argue first game season at home, Bournemouth.
Totally.
Okay, Newcastle away. You could also argue it should have been higher, considering we were a man up for, let's say, ostensibly an hour, right? So, there's some periods in there. He also didn't complete a full game until the weekend, right? So, so let's look at against Arsenal, our title rival, as people would say. He actually, considering I thought he was, I'd say poor first off. I thought there was a couple of instances he played in, broke the first man, did a Coutinho turn, and we were like 3-on-3. And he just made the wrong decision 3 or 4 times. We were 3-on-4 at one point, I think, and he tries to ping a ball to Mo, and it's a slow under hit, and then Mo's like, well, what are we going to do with this? And try something, and it goes wrong. But I just think it's for decision-making in the first half, not just flow, but it seemed to be a bit of a fulcrum for him. Just wasn't happening. We couldn't get our players into play. Second half, if you look at the positions he was taking and the zone 14 plot that people will see and do whatever else, we've got so many more entries in zone 14 and the half space in the second half. So if it wasn't Flo, it was Mo, it was Cody, it was Ekatike. So we were clearly getting in those areas better, and that is shown in the second half because Wirtz has got a 20% threat involvement, right? In a game, in the first half, it was poor, right? And so the second half, he comes out. Also, Flo produced 2 passes into the penalty box, which is the first time he's done that. He had shot in the penalty box, and he was in and around the right areas more often if you look at his heat map as well. So, for me, if he can carry on doing the stuff he was doing against Arsenal in the second half, it might just finally start, coming together, because what it then enabled it to do was Mo was free. So we were able to find Mo more. Now, unfortunately, Mo had a really bad game in terms of his control, so that we got him in a couple of times and he miscontrolled it, which is really unlikely. But it was still in better areas, and we were able to find him, and he was isolating the Arsenal player 1v1. Whereas first half, because Flo was out, either having a bad game or drifting off somewhere else, Mo was 2v1. So I think there were signs there for me. Flo is starting to come. I'm not quite on board with the completely rejigging the system to play 2 10s and that. I think that we still need to, there's a period here, we give it a little bit longer to see if we can get my work, the flow work in the 10. But as you quite rightly said, him and Slot have said, we've bought him to play the 10. So they're going to have to figure it out,
This is the interesting thing, because obviously you're right, it's got to be figured out, but it does seem that, we're going to progress with this, if that's the right way of putting it. There's a thing about this midfield at the moment, and there's a couple of things that are crucial for context. Mac Allister's not really had a pre-season. He's had that injury. I think it's important to say. Macca looks a shadow of himself at the moment. He looks like he'd just done a 10-mile run before he even came on the pitch for this one. He's really just seemed to have been not quite himself. Grab, as obviously was suspended for the first game, comes in against Newcastle, I thought he did quite well on Sunday. I mean, the big thing to say as well about Sunday is it changes when Curtis Jones comes on for Macca, but this does seem to be, at the moment, from a limited sample size and what we seem to be seeing. And the other thing I'm going to throw into the mix, Barts, is in the press conference before, Slot was keen to emphasise that he's not had a chance to play these two, Macca and Grab, as the pivot, regularly. So that will be key at the same time. If this is the midfield triumvirate, the first choice three, you mentioned it there, people are worried it's a little bit lightweight at the moment. Maybe Macca's not on it. And it does, change a lot when Jones comes on that pitch because, like, the physicality. What do sort of the stats say around the case for that? Because you put it right. We've got to figure it out. But, we might have to go through some more teething problems with this. What are the stats saying for it?
So we've talked about Barts. We won't go through that again, all right? But in terms of the other two, right, I agree with you. I thought Grab was good against Newcastle. I thought he was good at the weekend. I thought he's got 82% pass rate, 94% receiving. So that's, he typically should be doing that high as a pivot. 7% contribution to our threat, which is quite high for Grab because he doesn't. That's not normally what he does. In terms of Grab, dual rate 80%, didn't compete for any aerials. That's not a big shock. It's an area he probably does need to work on. And he didn't actually stop any threat facing him, right? Which you can partially come down to the fact that Arsenal didn't have a player in that area until late on, right? And secondly, Mac was more the one slightly further forward of the pivot, right? So there's some things you can take into it, but it's still a little bit of a surprise. So you then look at his partner, so Mac, which supports that where Grab wasn't facing anything. Mac lost all the threat he faced. Everything came at him from a threat perspective. Mac lost. Jeez. Mac lost all of his duels, right? And Mac lost all of his aerials that game. All right, so defensively, Mac didn't have the greatest game, right? In 62 minutes, wasn't the best, right? He made a couple of interceptions and he recovered the ball, but typically he doesn't need to recover because he's already preempted the problem, right? So that gives you a little sign that it wasn't quite going as well. Mac on the ball, 84% pass success, which is low for him, okay? Only 6% of our on-ball time that game, which again is low. Typically, Mac is the one saying, I'll have the ball, thanks. I'll keep things ticking over. In those long chains where you remove all doubt from the opposition that they've got any chance, Mac is normally the one saying, I'll have that. I'll move it around. So for him to have that low amount, only 25 passes as well in an hour, is a little bit, shows you again he wasn't quite there. Still created 9% of our threat, okay, but only 74% receiving success when he's that deep. So it shows you a little bit. I don't think Matt was quite there, and Slot was Slot loves Mac. I think we all like Mac, right?
Yeah, best midfielder in the Premier League. Yeah,
right. So you've got to get him fit, and the only way you're going to get him fit is playing him, because that's the way we train now, isn't it? We don't. There's no load management. The way we do training and the way we are is that he gets fit for a player. So that's going to be something he's going to have to try and get through. Luckily, the next two. So he's Burnley. He's probably one we can get away with Mac being just word himself in. Everton will be interesting to see what we do there. All right. Because Curtis, again, for the second game running, I thought was arguably the best midfielder. When he came on, he was, considering Curtis was on for 38 minutes, right? So half of Mac's time, roughly. He contributed to 6% of our threat. Yeah, Mac for a longer time had 9%, right? Curtis had 95% pass success, which is actually low for him. He's normally extremely high, doesn't misplace a pass typically. Yeah, 22 passes in his time. Mac was 25, so only 3 less, and he was on for just over half time. So, and where Curtis was playing the ball, he made 4 final third passes, 2 progressive passes, right? So
Nice.
there was some good little nuggets in there, but defensively, which is where Curtis was really good at Newcastle, superb defensively, 100% dual success for Curtis, right? 100% of threat stopped, right? And he didn't compete for any aerials, but yeah, by that time they changed. I think Odegaard was on, so they weren't hitting Marina anymore. So yeah, Curtis for me, I've always said he's just unfortunate, right? In another world, in another Premier League side, I would say he starts. I don't know many other Premier League sides that Curtis Jones wouldn't start.
Yeah,
but he's competed against Mac. It's unfortunate. So yeah, I think Curtis at the moment has an argument, I think, to start. But I do think Slot will keep trying to get Mac fit because ultimately Mac fit with Grab is probably our best two. And he's not going to not play Wirtz because he wants Wirtz to get used to in sync with the side. So, yeah, Wirtz, to be fair to him, 83% dual rate and stopped 100% of threat coming his way. So he's improved his defensive metrics for the first two games. So, yeah, I think as a unit, if that is Slot's preferred unit that you've got on the screen now, as much as we all might be a bit like, oh, can we get a bit more solidity and that kind of thing, which is a fair question we've all got. Yeah, he's going to play him because he wants them to get used to playing together. If that's going to be his go-to three, he's going to play them because he wants them to get used to finding each other on the pitch, in the areas. If Barts is finding the space really well, it's just when he's on it, he's either rushing it or making the wrong choice, and that'll come just through play.
And you're right to mention it because I think it was the one thing that people... It's wrong to have a complaint about the summer, but people, as you know, they wanted a Belaber, like a destroyer, to bring a bit more solidity to that, or a Wharton in terms of, someone left-footed who could just punch it through the lines and play progressively that way. But it doesn't seem to interest Slot right now, does it, anyway, in terms of... Or if it's on the priority list, some people said he's just not done it now. Well, he's done a lot of other things, him and Richard Hughes, this summer, haven't they? So it does seem to be well down that list, really.
Yeah. I think I could see it maybe in a year's time, because churn is a real thing. It's a term that has been around for a while, but there's a lot of things out there about you can change too many players, right? That's a fact, right? Liverpool are the only champions who've changed. I think Chelsea are the only other champions to have changed this many players in one window than us, right? That was Mourinho. So there is some evidence out there that this might be just a tilt towards too many first-team players, not the squad. I'm talking about first-team players. Yeah. So if you look at it that way, then for me it makes sense that you try and keep one unit as close as it was to the previous season. If you're changing, you're changing half the back four, you're changing half the forward line, you might want to try and keep your engine room, typical phrase that, fairly similar, right? So, whereas next season you might look into it and go, right, well, I don't know, people might want to move on, I don't know, but I could go and get Wharton again, or I could get another 6. But yeah, that when all the other units are then settled. So yeah, there is some sense in not changing every unit in the side in one window.
Yeah, it's probably despite the biggest signing at the start, obviously before we're going to talk about the forward line, the most headline grabbing, that actually it has had the least changes overall. Endo's still at the club. Yes, Harvey Elliott's departed, but there we go. An interesting one for the midfield.